a couple of the Crips, and then they take over a block, and then the Crips kill some more Bloods and take over another block. So this thing keeps shifting all the time. Now, what are these Bloods and Crips? Because the gang structure of Los Angeles you have to understand it in order to do anything in this city. These are the Crips. Blue. The Crips are blue. They have a blue handkerchief. And the Crips came up in the 60s after the riots. Immediately after the riots, and then after, for example, also Martin Luther King was killed, Malcolm X was killed, this whole idea of non-violent, civil rights based emancipation of blacks was more or less frustrated in violence. The Black Panthers came up. There was a whole new generation that did not, we talked about this in the Detroit case, there was a whole new generation of black people who noticed that they were economically not earning more, and they noticed that non-violent behavior was not helping them. And there was the enormous rise of drugs. The drug economy started taking off. So you have, what you had is in the Crips in Los Angeles were the first real organized gang that came up, and then they immediately split off. A group split off, and this group was called the Bloods. And the Bloods they started fighting each other for territory, and then after a couple of years, this relationship crystallized of Crips versus Bloods. And this Crips versus Bloods thing became a kind of producer of violence nearly as a goal in itself. So young boys were initiated into the violence. They had to first shoot someone in order to be able to deal drugs on the street, etc. So Los Angeles, South Central, in the period after the riots in the 60s, more or less produced this culture of violence and of gangs that is still very relevant. And of course it literally is a culture of violence. A quite well-known Crip, Tupac Shakur, after he was killed in also a Crips and Bloods related gunfight, you can see all through Los Angeles, but even in Hoogvliet, you can see these kinds of, all through the global Los Angeles that we all live in. You can see these types of graffiti: live by the gun, die by the gun. And this culture of violence, this culture of gangs, this culture of war, of nearly tribal war, permanent warfare, also was at the same time glamorized, you could say, but also others would say, no, we don't glamorize it, we just tell it like it is, we just report on it. But in the case, in the case of Los Angeles, I think glamorized is absolutely the case. One of the big industries of the Los Angeles black community, of course, was the rap, the West Coast rap music that started out in the late 80s, before the riots, and is still very important. And one of the big labels was Death Row Records. And again, also here you can see that even the fact that black men are being executed, more than a quarter of all black men in the United States will have had a jail sentence throughout their lives, 28%, so it's nearly a third. 70% of black children in America are born to single-parent families. A black boy in an American ghetto like South Central during the Iraq War had more chance of being shot, of dying by gunshots on the streets of where he comes from than if he would go to Baghdad. And then we're talking about 2004, 2005, when the violence in Baghdad was at its height. So the statistics and the reality of these areas is terrifying, horrific. And at the same time, it produces this kind of very exciting, sophisticated rap music by people like Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, Ice-T, Tupac, etc. So while outside people are killing each other, inside you have recording studios where beautifully made rap and hip-hop music is being made about the killing each other. One of the big instigators of this music scene was the NWA, Niggers with an Attitude, with their album Straight Outta Compton. Now, for people of my generation, this is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Because that is also the interesting thing, of course, that all these white boys from the suburbs were also completely wiped away by this music. They loved it. This is, you know, the funny thing is, you would say that a situation so unique, so terrifying, so extreme, that it produces a culture, or that it produces cultural products that have such an enormous appeal, such a universal appeal. But anyway, Niggers with an Attitude, their first album, Straight Outta Compton, with the famous song, Fuck the Police. And this is, for example, a mural or a painting out on a building. So 4 years after this album came out, of NWA, Niggers with an Attitude, and one of their most, Dr. Dre was part of it, and Ice Cube was part of it. I think the rest are dead. And here they are standing in Beverly Hills, and the whole place is on fire. And the guy Gates is the police chief of Los Angeles. So Niggers with an Attitude have set fire to Beverly Hills, the richest area of Los Angeles, and have the police chief in a stranglehold. So they've won. They've come out of Compton and taken over the entire city. And here's the lyrics. The funny thing, the lyrics of this song, Fuck the Police, are they're in the form of a trial. So you can see the NWA court is in full effect, and then Ice Cube is the first witness, and he is asked, do you swear to tell the whole truth, to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help your black ass? And then he delivers the verdict. It's a kind of a show trial on the police, and they take the right to fight the police wherever they go. Afterwards, Ice Cube went solo, of course, and he made this album, A Death Certificate. And who has gotten the death certificate? Uncle Sam. So Ice Cube is the coroner, the pathologist, and on the slab lies Uncle Sam. The United States is dead. And he's going to show us why and how. Maybe he killed him. So this is the kind of culture of violence. This song was specifically made for on the riots. This was made days after, when the riots were still going on. We had to tear this motherfucker up. And it's also a song that is purely about revenge. It is not a song that talks about the desperation, or that says, isn't it terrible that this is happening? It doesn't report on it. It doesn't reflect on it. It doesn't complain about it. It takes part in it. It's a violent fantasy of going to these suburban areas where the jurors live that have acquitted the attackers of Rodney King, to go to where the police live that have attacked Rodney King and to basically kill them. So it's a pure revenge fantasy. Nothing reflective, nothing at all. On the other hand, this hip-hop culture, this West Coast hip-hop culture had also another effect, which is also interesting, and it's this kind of fantasy world effect. This is one of the most famous West Coast songs that are around, the California Love song with Tupac and Dr. Dre. And so it's called California Love, but they don't offer a kind of realistic image of Los Angeles or California where they live. No, it's a kind of reenactment of Mad Max. So they more or less show that living in LA is like being in a Mad Max movie. Post-apocalyptic, no government, just violent motorized gangs attacking each other all the time in a kind of post-nuclear desert situation. So that is how they live. That is how they feel that they live. That they are these kind of post-apocalyptic, post-nuclear survivors, soldiers that live in a completely violent and completely anarchistic situation, but still they get a kind of euphoria from it. It's one of the most happy and one of the most party-like songs that you can imagine from this music. It's total happiness, total euphoria, and still it's post-apocalyptic nightmare. One of the things that happened during the riots was that the Bloods and the Crips, they made a truce. They got together. They stopped the violence for a couple of years, and they made a truce. And then this also created an enormous amount of imagery and graffiti and comic books and rap albums that celebrated this truce between the blue and the red. So the blue and the red comes together. Why? Well, to attack the police, to attack the Koreans, to attack everyone else. The blue and the reds come together to take back the city of Los Angeles for the gangs. Oops. There's an immense amount of this kind of imagery was produced. And there was also this Mike Davis, somebody I'll speak of more later. There was graffiti found, day one, burn them out, day two, we rebuild. And them is the Koreans. So what you see is that underneath this seemingly manic, somebody has called it a manic fiesta of violence, the riots in LA, to point at the difference with the riots in '65, where the riots in '65 were not manic and they were not a fiesta, they were an insurrection. But here, of course, that is also debatable, but compared to them, the riots in '92 were certainly a manic fiesta of violence. But beneath this manic fiesta of violence were certain agendas, certain structures, certain tendencies, certain strategies that you could find. It's not entirely clear how dominant these strategies were and how important they actually were, but they were there anyway. And this was pointed out by Mike Davis, who found many of similar utterances, not just in graffiti, but also by interviewing gang members, interviewing people who took part in the riots, that there was this idea of the Koreans are the ones with the corner shops and the small shops and the liquor stores and the grocery stores and the laundromats and etc. And the blacks are just the customers. So they feel like the Koreans are the people that are sucking them dry. You know, like it used to be the absentee landlords in Detroit, or the white shopkeepers that were then the oppressors. So having a shop within a black neighborhood was seen to be a sign of oppression if the shop was not owned by somebody from that neighborhood. But when the white